Aussie space. It's super weird. It's kind of down by where the Austin Statesman is, the Austin American Statesman. Big weird space, and like the state. So I was like, I wanted to check out some improv, and I had seen some stuff at Hideout, and I went and I saw actually UCB performed. They came in like the fall of 2000. You know, the main four, like back when that show was, they were just getting off the air and everything. So you know, Polar and everybody. And the stage was like very shallow and very long, wide, and it was just like, this is a really weird. It just the space was weird. And anyway, I was kind of like, I basically flipped a coin. Where am I going to go take classes? Am I going to go to the Hideout or Bad Dog? And I think just the environment of the Hideout was just ever so slightly better, and I went there. And I'm glad I did, because the Bad Dog went belly up like within 6 months. Within like 6 months of me starting to do improv, I felt like it was just they couldn't. It was the monthly rent there was so fucking high that they couldn't keep it going, and like what would happen was they because the rent was so high, they eventually got to the point where they weren't allowing their own performers to play on the stage because they needed to bring in guest acts all the time to hopefully draw enough audience to sell enough liquor that they could keep it open. And it didn't work out that way, but
yeah, theater as a business, not really great.
And a bar, you know, just like it was just like a. And then I think there's like it's built, that spot is built over like a Indian burial ground or something, because it just turned over. It was like a gay sports bar for a while, and it was like Steamboat Willie's.
It's not the one that
LeBaire?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not the LeBaire building, is it?
I don't remember.
Because I know that building has been 90 things since I've.
Yeah, there's been one building that's right near a bunch of municipal buildings, and it's nothing. Yeah. And I was like, this is prime real estate, people, and. People,
is it the one like right on Riverside next to that Sonic?
It's
yeah, that's it.
That's the place. LeBaire, maybe that's what it was. Yeah. It was like a gay sports bar for that. Was that what LeBaire was?
LeBaire was,
I thought LeBaire was men dancing. Like,
okay. So then it was a different thing. It's been it's had a couple of gay. Cultural spots.
I'm sure.
Other things, it was like called Steamboat Willie's for a while. It was the Bad Dog Comedy Theater. I mean, seriously, it's been like 85 things.
Wow. So yeah, it's just cursed.
It's cursed. It's a horrible. Something about it. I think the rent is super high. It's a bad location. Like
I think there's weird zoning limbo is what I heard about it, because I remember thinking, because back in the day when I was with the New Movement and they were at. Rosewood and Chacon, we were looking for other spaces, and I remember being like, guys, this space is nothing.
Amazing.
It's just right here, and wouldn't it be great? And somebody looked into it and was all like, the zoning of this particular section is ridiculous. There's no way we'd surmount it. And we're like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, moving on. What, like, surmount it just like from a
from just like a legal standpoint, because I don't know
like the number of parking spaces you would need to run it as a theater, or
sorts of like to get the license to run it in in the particular area that it was. I think it like people are really noticing things. They're checking you for fire code. They're checking you for.
I see. It was like
you got to pay this license and that license. They
and
want to get
just
the bar,
really on top of
it.
And
it's too much.
Well, and I just think it must be because of its location. The rent must be crazy high, but then at the same time, it's like
no one's renting it.
No one's renting it either. So I don't, landlords.
It's a tax write-off.
It's somebody's
tax write-off for sure. I was like, guys, turn it into a Hilton or something for the love of God.
Just blow it up and
just
build
make it.
Up.
Who cares? It could be one condo per floor.
But so I think it was. I mean, anyway, it was good luck. I think that I chose the Hideout rather than the Bad Dog, because I was able to keep doing stuff or whatever. So
yeah, and you were at the Hideout even during its transition into what it is now, or I mean, what it is. It's sort of newer now, but the various incarnations of it. Being run by the team that it is now, and
so I was around. So I was very heavily involved in the improv community from it's kind of weird. So 2001, 2002, I was doing shows all the time, and I think that's pretty common when people first get into it. I didn't have kids yet. My son was born in 2003, so I took a year off in 2003, but. I promised, it just worked out this way, that the Out of Bounds Festival, which was founded by Jeremy Lamb, now Jeremy Sweet Lamb, is his new married name. But Jeremy Lamb and the guys who were in this troupe called Well Hung Jury founded the Out of Bounds Festival in '02. And he was here in '02, '03, and then that's when my son, was a little baby, and I was like not doing as much stuff just because I had a little guy and I was helping my wife at home and all that jazz.
They take up a lot of time.
Pardon?
They take up a lot of time.
They take up a lot of time, yeah. And anyway, but then the jury disbanded because they were all moving elsewhere. Most of them moved to Chicago, and they were going to go do the Chicago I.O. route. And all that jazz at the end of '03, and he handed the festival over to my friend Mike DeLonzo, and Mike kind of was like, he wanted co-producer, so we ended up taking it over as executive producers together. So in '04, that was like my first year as producer of the Out of Bounds Festival. So Mike and I produced that. Like there's a lot of movings in and out, but. I was there from '04 through '08 as a producer. But improv in Austin, like when the jury broke up at the end of 2003, the improv in Austin almost died in like end of 2003, 2004. It was like not doing well. Like shows would not. The Hideout was the only place in town. Sean Hill was like an absentee owner, and he basically let Andy Crouch just kind of program it however he wanted to, willy-nilly. But there was no Andy didn't have a free hand either to do exactly everything he wanted to do in the space. So it was like basically just kind of this open venue that people could book and program shows kind of if they wanted to or how they wanted to do it. But shows would not make all the time. You'd go there like on a Friday at 8 or a Saturday show or whatever and be dead. There'd be like 7 people in the audience or whatever like that. So it was a dark time back then. So I wasn't doing, even though I was like, the Hideout was kind of the only game in town, I wasn't doing a ton of shows there per se, except for producing the festival and making the festival run.
At what point in this this beginning path of your improv career did you sort of get into doing acting here, like in a voice acting, film acting kind of way?
Early on, so I've always kind of had a hand in, or like a foot in different communities here in Austin. So there's the improv community, there's the theater community as well. So I got involved with Salvage Vanguard Theater very quickly as well. So like by the summer of 2001, I started doing shows with Salvage Vanguard Theater, which was the play that I saw when I came in 2000, was SVT at the Hideout. It was weird. Like I said, it was like all of my future Austin was kind of contained in this one little moment when we came and visited town in spring of 2000, because it was at the Hideout and it was a Salvage Vanguard Theater show. So I got to be pretty close with Dan Dietz and Jason Newlander, who were running Salvage Vanguard Theater at the time. Started doing shows with them. And Dan was a playwright. He's now like writing for Westworld and Person of Interest. He's got some good TV credits and stuff like that. But Dan had a gig as the translator / writer for this anime house called ADV, which is based in Houston, but they had a satellite studio here in Austin at 501 Studios building in the early 2000s, and all the local theater people would get cast in all the roles for these anime dubbing things. So I started doing voice work for them, and Lowell Bartholomew and Robert Pearson who are still around in town. They were like the directors and the audio guys over there. So it was like it had this like super duper like Austin theater community vibe. Like all the old school Austin theater people have like a ton of anime credits. Then like happens in a lot of these places. So they overextended like in the early 2000s. They tried to start their own. If I understand it right, they tried to start their own like anime network, and it was just a little bit too early for the whole anime thing. It was like they were trying to do this cable network thing, and they blew a bunch of money doing that, and the numbers weren't there, the audience weren't there, and they sold themselves for pieces essentially, and the Austin anime studio closed down probably in like 2003, something like that. But and then I would like audition for short films and things like that, student films through the UT stuff and whatever. And I had done some film acting before I came to Austin as well, so I had a little bit of on camera experience as well, so that's like turned into some stuff. I ended up getting a agent in like 2004, I think, 04, something like that. So
right on.
Yeah.
I would like to ask a question about a little further back. You had gone to grad school in New Mexico for fiction writing.
Yeah.
Was this right after college, or was this like you had gone to college, done acting somewhere in perhaps another city in the world, and then you guys moved to New Mexico?
It was the latter scenario. So I went to undergrad at the University of Iowa, and did a lot of writing there. I was they didn't have like a creative writing undergrad degree then, but I might as well have been given the number of creative writing classes that I took, etc. But they also had this thing. They also had No Shame Theater, if you've heard of No Shame, which I produced here in Austin for a long time. No Shame was like something that was run out of the theater building, and I started doing stuff there. And it was like basically it was like an open mic for the performing arts. Super theatrically inclined, not like stand-up focused, but very like people would just like write. You had like 5 minutes and tops, and you just like people would just do crazy performance art, theater sketches, whatever. So I started doing that, and by the end of my time there, even though I was an English major, most of my friends were like people in the theater department or affiliated with the theater department. So I had like a bunch of theater friends. When I got and had done a couple of regular plays in addition to my own home crafted sketch comedy weirdness, and then after undergrad, I moved to Prague in the Czech Republic, and I lived there for about 3 years.
Like on your own, like single guy in Prague.
Single guy in Prague. It's where I met my wife. She's American, but we met there.
Wild.
Yeah, and there was like there was a very strong expat American and other expat community there, and then so like it was a very strong scene, and there was also this super bizarre entree into the film world there, because there was so in '68 when the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia, because they had this sort of like, we want to do communism but not the Soviet way. And the Russians didn't like that at all, so they invaded in '68, and a bunch of Czechs were like, "We're out of here." So they fled the country in '68, and a lot of them went to Canada. So I knew a bunch of Czech Canadian guys who'd like then after the wall came down in '89, they'd come back and they were like getting back in touch with their roots. Like their parents were not refugees, they were emigres or whatever, and they had grown up. They were like 2 when the Soviets invaded or whatever, and they came back. But there was also this crazy Czech Canadian dude. He must have come over to Canada when he was like in his teens or 20s, because he was like in his 50s now, in the late 90s. And he had this crazy straight-to-video movie production house called North American Pictures that was like, they made action movies. I can't remember his first name. His last name was Shamandl. But Lukáš, I think. Lukáš Shamandl. And they were like, I think they were like based out of Vancouver, but they did all the production work in Czechoslovakia. At this point, now is the Czech Republic.
Right, yeah.
So they bought this like weird potato warehouse about an hour south of Prague, and converted it into a movie studio. And they would make these terrible action movies that were never intended to be theatrically released. They were released direct to video, like in Southeast Asia was like their market. I don't get it. It was like super weird.
Wherever you can,
yeah. So I was in a bunch like so like my essentially my first film role in any sort of meaningful professional film set way was in a movie called Crackerjack 2: Hostage Train, with Judge Reinhardt as action hero Jack Wilde.
What? Why are we watching that right now?
The plot of the movie is these like German